Coming up on Mountain News this morning, 2 men convicted in connection with Crystal Rogers' death were sentenced yesterday. And 3.5 years into Russia's war against Ukraine, peace is far away as ever, with one Republican congressman calling on Donald Trump to do more.
Dedicated to Eastern and Southern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News this morning.
Good morning, I'm Caroline Mueller. We are inching up on that 5 o'clock hour on this Thursday, September 18th. Let's go ahead and check in with meteorologist Megan Dusmal for a look at your forecast this morning. Megan, I was kind of a little chilly when I was walking out my door this morning, but I know as all week, I'm sure it's gonna be pretty hot by the time I'm walking out the door this afternoon.
Yeah, that is exactly correct. A little bit of a chillier start to your day, but definitely a hotter afternoon. Here's what we're seeing this morning in terms of those temperatures. A lot of mid to upper 50s, which doesn't sound too bad, but normally this time of year, we sit in the upper 50s. So some folks are actually cooler than normal. This afternoon, that will not be the story, though. Much warmer than normal as those high temperatures sit in the mid to upper 80s, and some folks even have the chance of hitting that 90-degree mark today. 90 is the forecast high in Moorhead, Irvin, and Somerset. So going to be a hot day ahead. In terms of rain chances, though, we will stay nice and clear, and looking at clear skies too as you're heading out the door this morning. Not too bad of a day at all. Just a little bit of some fog being picked up for more of our southern counties. So just make sure you're driving carefully if you do encounter any patches of dense fog this morning. Caroline.
Sounds good, Megan. Thank you. 2 men convicted in connection with Crystal Rogers' death were sentenced yesterday. Brooks Hawk was sentenced to life in prison for conspiracy to murder and 5 years for tampering with evidence. Joseph Lawson was sentenced to 20 years for conspiracy to murder and 5 years for tampering with evidence, with these sentences to be served consecutively. Stephen Lawson, Joseph's father, was sentenced to 17 years in prison earlier this year. Rogers disappeared in 2015. Her body has not been found. Here in Kentucky, people gathered in Danville for a candlelight vigil in memory of Charlie Kirk. Hundreds gathered in a park in the heart of the city to mourn and reflect on the loss of the conservative activist. One of the speakers at the event, a pastor at Danville Church of God, says he felt the vigil was a great way to honor Kirk's life.
To recognize Charlie Kirk and the stand that he took for his faith, for the gospel, but most importantly, what he invested and his values into our children.
The event also drew some who disagreed with Kirk's conservative takes. We spoke with one woman holding a sign and standing in silent protest at the vigil. She tells us she didn't go to be confrontational, but to make her voice heard and stand in peace with neighbors who have different beliefs. ABC has suspended Jimmy Kimmel's late-night show indefinitely following comments he made about Charlie Kirk's killing. Kimmel has not commented yet. President Trump called it great news. Kimmel, like CBS late-night host Stephen Colbert, has consistently been critical of the president and many of his policies. CBS said earlier this year it was canceling Colbert's show at the end of this season for financial reasons. Turmoil at the CDC took center stage in Washington yesterday as senators look for answers about the former head of the agency being fired in just 29 days. Former Director Susan Monarez testified before Congress yesterday. WYMT Washington correspondent Brendan Collerton breaks down that hearing.
Health Secretary RFK Jr. already testified before Congress this month. Now the former CDC director he fired gets to tell her side of the story. Susan Monarez says it all comes down to science.
If someone is fired 29 days after every Republican votes for her.
Republican Bill Cassidy says it's important to learn what went wrong with a CDC director unanimously supported by Senate Republicans fired almost immediately.
What happened? Did we fail? Was there something we should have done differently?
The White House says Monarez was fired for not upholding President Donald Trump's mission. Monarez says she was fired for refusing to pre-approve new vaccine recommendations without seeing scientific evidence supporting them.
I was fired for holding the line on scientific integrity, but that line does not disappear with me. It now runs through every parent deciding whether to vaccinate a child, every physician counseling a patient.
The committee also heard testimony from Dr. Deborah Oury, one of the senior officials who recently resigned from the CDC.
I resigned because CDC leaders were reduced to rubber stamps, supporting policies not based in science, and putting American lives at risk.
Republicans fired back, saying Menarez is anti-Trump and that she wouldn't listen to calls about looking into vaccine ages.
The burden should be on you. You want to make all the kids take this? The burden is upon you and the people you wouldn't fire to prove to us that we need to give our 6-month-old a COVID vaccine.
Menarez disputed those allegations and says she simply wanted to see evidence before approving new practices. Menarez says the stakes of the CDC battle are not theoretical, as the U.S. recently had the largest measles outbreak in 30 years, claiming the lives of 2 children. Reporting in Washington, I'm Brendan Cullerton.
Soon, President Trump will bid farewell to the King and Queen of the United Kingdom after receiving the royal treatment at a lavish welcoming ceremony and state dinner yesterday. Next, he heads to the UK Prime Minister's country home for high-level talks on economic cooperation between the two nations. The two leaders are expected to hold a public news conference later today.
The bond of kinship and identity between America and the United Kingdom is priceless and eternal. I believe we're the hottest country anywhere in the world.
The conflict in the Middle East and Russia's war in Ukraine are also expected to come up during today's talks between the president and prime minister. While President Trump meets with Prime Minister Starmer, First Lady Melania Trump will spend the morning at events hosted by Queen Camilla and Princess Kate. 3.5 years into Russia's war against Ukraine, peace is as far away as ever. One Republican congressman is calling on President Donald Trump to do more to defend Ukraine against Russia. Nebraska Representative Don Bacon says he's a Ronald Reagan-style Republican who is deeply concerned about the future of the world order. He supports any legislative sanctioning of Russia and its allies, as well as arming Ukraine.
China and India are largely propping up the Russian economy, and they're propping up a war against a democracy. I'm the first Republican to get on a Democrat bill to discharge one, to force a vote on the floor.
Bacon went on to say he thought the U.S. would be impacted if Russian President Vladimir Putin continued down the current path. Bacon announced earlier this year he would not run for re-election in one of the country's most competitive swing districts in Nebraska. The Federal Reserve announced the first interest rate cut of the year. Policymakers voted to lower a key interest rate 1/4 percentage point, and they signaled 2 more cuts are likely later this year. The move is designed to keep the economy growing by making it less expensive to borrow money. Economists say that could encourage businesses to hire more workers and bolster the labor market. The Kentucky auditor claims an exam found that more than $800 million of taxpayer money was unnecessarily spent on Medicaid payments. Auditor Allison Ball released the information yesterday. In her report, Ball said the $800 million of taxpayer money was wasted. The report says that DMS did not take the basic steps needed to not duplicate payments made by other states. Ball says the payments occurred between January of 2019 and 2022. Thanks for getting your day started with us here on Mountain News this morning. Just ahead, the sounds of hammers, saws, and drills are common in several neighborhoods in southern Kentucky as communities continue to rebuild 4 months after a deadly tornado.
And temperatures are heating up today and this weekend.